Hi, this is Trepacer, and welcome to my Saturday reviews. Normally, I would review two movies, but I actually went to the movies today and saw two movies and reviewed Carrie 2013 and The Escape Plan, which I saw, and those reviews are on my channel. But I wanted to review two movies anyway, and since it's October and Halloween month, I decided to go old school, and I'm a big monster fan, so I'm reviewing two movies out of this Halloween. That is Universal Monster Legacy DVD Collection gift set. Okay, and the two movies that I'll be reviewing for this episode, it will be House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, 1944, and House of Dracula, 1945. And this is when Universal decided to team up, put multiple monsters in the movies, in these two movies, because they figured more monster, more money. Okay, so starting with Universal's 1944 House of Frankenstein. This movie combines 5 monsters, the same as House of Dracula. You have the Frankenstein monster, the Wolfman, Dracula, the Hunchback, and the evil scientist. Okay, and that would be the 5th monster. Okay, and in this story, you have Boris Karloff coming back into the story, but this time he doesn't play the monster in this. He plays an evil scientist, and you have J. Carrol Naish as his friend, as a Hunchback, who's in prison with him, Daniel. Okay, and you have John Carradine as Dracula, and of course Lon Chaney Jr. as Forever Cursed, the Wolfman. Okay, and then this movie starts off with Dr. Niemann and Daniel in jail. Okay, Dr. Niemann is a scientist who's been basically put in jail for experimenting, trying to put, I think they even said, trying to put a human's brain into a dog. Okay, and he got sentenced, I think, to 25 years or whatever it was. So he's been in jail for the past 15 years. Okay, plotting his revenge against the people that testified against him and the people that sentenced him to jail. And during one night, of course, there's a lightning strike that hits the prison and basically destroys that part of the prison. So they make their escape, Daniel and Dr. Niemann. Okay, where basically they went upon this carnival barker who's running a show that he has supposedly the remains of Count Dracula in it, and of course they kill him and take over his carnival show. And one day behind the scenes, Dr. Niemann actually pulls the stake out of what you think is a fake skeleton, but it actually turns out to be the real Dracula, and he gets actually revived once the stake is pulled out of his heart. And Dr. Niemann promises, on the threat of putting it back into his heart, telling him, listen, I'll watch over your grave if you do me a favor and kill the Burgermeister who sentenced me to prison time. And of course, Dracula agrees to do this, because since Dr. Niemann promised to watch over his grave for him, he agrees to do this. And of course, during the midst of his destroying the Burgermeister, he finds that the Burgermeister has a nice young daughter who Dracula becomes instantly smitten with and wants to possess. Okay, and then of course during the course of this possession, he gets discovered and found out, and basically Dr. Niemann and Daniel abandon him by, when the villagers are chasing him, when he's running off with the Burgermeister's daughter, he throws his coffin with his fresh dirt off their trailer, and of course Dracula has to go get it, and then of course he basically gets killed by the approaching sunlight. So his story is over, and then you move on to Dr. Niemann and Daniel. They come upon a village, a gypsy show, where a mean man is beating up a young gypsy girl who young Daniel, the Hunchback, instantly gets smitten with, and he stops the gypsy from beating him, and they take her along with him. Okay, and you can tell young Daniel's has a kind of a crush on her. Okay, and then they move on and they go to the Frankenstein remains. The Frankenstein ruins. And in the last movie, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, they found when the Frankenstein monster and the Wolfman clashed, and they get blown up by the villagers, and they got frozen. Okay, down in during the midst of their, they're getting blown up. They got frozen in ice, and Daniel and Dr. Niemann discover them, and they decide to unthaw them to discover, because maybe one of them can find out that Frankenstein's secrets of life and death notes that Dr. Niemann needs to continue his experiments. And they do that, and of course Larry Talbot is distraught at being brought back to life, okay, and having to go through these transformations again, okay, and the Frankenstein monster is severely damaged from the being frozen, so he has to get recharged up, and basically, and the rest of the movie is Larry, Talbot, trying to get Dr. Demon to cure him like he promised, who's really only interested in reviving the monster, and of course, the villagers discovering that Dr. Demon is experimenting in his castle again, and this movie is really, really good. It's just a really solid entry into the only negative I think to me in House of Frankenstein is that the monsters don't really meet. You have the main monster, the Frankenstein monster, the Wolfman, and Dracula, and they don't. There's never a scene with all three of them together. That's my only regret about that. They don't actually meet together. But there is a scene between two monsters in this movie. I guess there are actually two scenes towards the end of the movie, which I don't want to spoil. Between two monsters, two scenes with monsters in it towards the end of this movie. Okay, and you also get the subplot of the young gypsy girl actually crushing on Larry Talbot. Okay, and of course making young Daniel, who's the hunchback, who has a crush on her, extremely jealous, and he takes it out on the monster. Okay, so you have to see that to believe it. Okay, anyway, but it's a nice entry into the series. Okay, and the next movie, 1945, is House of Dracula. Now, if you saw House of Frankenstein, there's a little bit of the continue. I guess you would say the continue. What's the word? I guess there's not a lot of continuation from that movie to House of Dracula, because if you see the end of House of Frankenstein, when you see House of Dracula, you'll say it doesn't make sense, the beginning of it, because it doesn't match up to the end of the House of Frankenstein, even though it's supposed to be a direct sequel. But that's something that you can see when you watch it. Okay, I don't want to spoil that, but anyway, House of Dracula begins with a visitor coming to the castle of a doctor. There's a doctor who does these nice experiments. Dr. Franz Edelman, who's he works with a young nurse and a hunchback nurse. Okay, so they do experiments helping villagers and stuff, and so he's well regarded in the community. Okay, and he gets visited by Count Dracula, who basically tells him that he wants to cure his affliction. Okay, and so Dr. Edelman devises a series of blood transfusions. Okay, that hopefully will help him wean him off his desire for blood. Okay, and of course, Count Dracula gets instantly smitten with the young nurse that Dr. Edelman has in his employ. Okay, and then also that same night, Larry Talbot, aka the Wolfman, comes to Dr. Edelman's trying to see him, but he's with Count Dracula at the time, so he can't wait. So he basically turns himself into the police, and of course, the police inspector calls Dr. Edelman there to see this madman who basically forced him to lock him up, saying that he's going to murder someone, and then they see Larry Talbot actually transform into the Wolfman before their eyes. Okay, but luckily for them, he's locked up behind a cell. Okay, and so they decide the next morning to come after this spell is over to, examine him and see if he can help him. Okay, and of course, he tells them the tale of that he transforms into a wolf, and of course, then Dr. Edelman basically prescribes that he has to do some kind of experiment on his brain to expand his brain, because he has basically some sort of like tumor-like thing on his brain, which is actually triggering the transformation into the Wolfman. But he has to get a special plan to do this. But of course, Larry Talbot can't wait to do so he basically jumps off a cliff, not wanting to go through the transformation again. And of course, Dr. Edelman goes to rescue him, and in the midst of rescuing him, he gets attacked by the Wolfman. But luckily for him, it's at the end of his transformation, so he transforms back to Larry Talbot before he kills him. And in that instant, they also discover the body of the Frankenstein monster, which has been frozen in quicksand from the last movie. And they take him back, and they also discover plants that will help Larry Talbot with his experiment, with the operation to remove the pressure on his brain. Okay, in the meantime, Dracula is basically infatuated with the nurse, so he actually reverses the transformation. I mean, the blood transfusions that he's getting, and actually some of the blood, his evil blood, seeps into Dr. Edelman, actually transforming him into like a Jekyll and Hyde type character. And also, but in the meantime, he does have a chance in his saner moments to experiment on Larry Talbot and give him the operation which stops his transformation into the Wolfman. And also at the same time, Dr. Edelman stops Count Dracula, but at the same time, he can't control his evil side, and his evil side actually goes out and murders people. And then there's a big climax, which I don't want to spoil. This movie, you could tell, is kind of the waning end of the Universal horror movies, because they actually use footage from Ghost of Frankenstein in this movie towards the end of the movie, which I don't want to spoil. Okay, but this movie is kind of a lesser version of House of Frankenstein. It's okay. Like I said, there's no continuation from the previous movie, and the Frankenstein monster in this is not in this movie that much at all. He just gets revived for the last like 5 minutes of the movie. Okay, and this movie is mostly about Larry Talbot, which I'm glad in this movie he gets a cure, and Dracula. Those are the two main things. And the Hunchback lady, you can tell, the Hunchback nurse is kind of in love with Dr. Edelman, of course, and she doesn't get a quote-unquote happy ending. But overall, two decent movies. I'll give the House of Frankenstein I'll give that an 8 out of 10, and a House of Dracula I would give it a 7 out of 10. Okay, so that's my two reviews. So let me know what you think of those two movies. Okay, feel free to leave comments down below. And damn it! Oh, sorry. That really hurts. Oh, sorry. Sorry. That really hurts. Okay.